Eleonora Viteria sits on her horse and points her sword at a young man as she asks him who he is. He says he is Tiger Vermont Vord, and she tells him he is hers from then on. Flashback to a while before. Tiger Vermont walks around the battlefield, calling Bertrand and Lord Mashes. As he continues to walk around wearily, he remembers the fierce battle and says to himself that it was a terrible battle. He remembers the war maiden that killed most of his men easily and later confirms that he has just 5 arrows left. He hears the sound of a horseman coming to attack him, but he easily shoots the man with his arrow. He then notices 7 horsemen and sees the war maiden that killed his men among them. He reasons that if he takes their leader out, they will have bigger worries than chasing him and his people down. He quickly hides behind a rock and calculates the distance between them, noting the range is about 300 alsens. He decides that he can hit her and comes out of his hiding place. The war maiden sees him as he comes out fearlessly and aims for her even as she and her guards comes towards him. He hits 2 of her guards' horses and she runs towards him. He shoots at her twice, but she easily deflects his arrows. She gets to him and points her sword at him, telling him to drop his weapon. Flashback to before the battle. Between the kingdoms of Brune and Zhc lies the Dinant Plains, where a major battle between the 2 countries is about to take place. Their overwhelming superiority of numbers fills the Brune soldiers with confidence, and not a single one of them thought they could lose. Tiger sits with his attendant Bertrand at the Brune soldiers' tents. Lord Zion the Nardier approaches him with some soldiers and taunts him for his looks and for using a bow. Zion tries to step on his bow, but Tiger pushes him away, asking what he would do if his bow got bent. They say a bow is the weapon of a coward, and he is only obsessing over his bow because he cannot handle a sword or spear. Zion says he is a disgrace for having an old man as his only attendant. As he continues to taunt Tiger, Lord Mashes interrupts him and tells him wine is now being distributed to the soldiers as he must be thirsty. Tiger sits with Lord Mashes and thanks him for helping. They overhear some men talking about Duke Gainlon, who is using the opportunity of the war to raise taxes, and if the people do not pay up, their daughter is taken off to the castle. Another man says Duke the Nardier, Zion's father, is forcing his subjects to give away their liquor as a pledge to the gods and burning the houses of those who refuse. They say Lord the Nardier is forcing family members to kill one another in duels as an example to others. Tiger is shocked to hear all this. He asks Lord Mashes if those things are happening. He tells him it is true and he has only not heard of it because he has not visited the capital for a while. Tiger asks about his majesty and Lord Mashes says he must have a plan, and even if he doesn't, the prince, Rignaz, will surely do something in time. Tiger wakes to a sword being shoved into his mouth by Lemalicia, one of Eleonora's guards. She tells him it is noon already and he must be the only prisoner who can sleep so soundly. He tells her it must be a special talent of his as he looks around the room. Meanwhile, Lord Mashes and Bertrand have taken the news to Alsace, Tiger's hometown, that Tiger has been captured. They explain to Tida, who has been taking care of Tiger since they were little kids, that their forces were routed during an enemy surprise attack. Tiger did not get away in time and was taken prisoner. Tida asks how that was possible as they outnumbered the enemy 5-1. Lord Mashes agrees, saying since it was Prince Rignaz's first campaign, His Majesty assembled a huge army. She complains that the king is asking too much of Tiger as he barely managed to scrape together the required 100 men for the battle. Bertrand tells her that Song the 107 are dead and 30 are injured, and this further saddens her. Mashes then tells her about the letter the enemy wrote that says unless Tiger's ransom is delivered to Zhc within 50 days, he will become their property. She asks how much it is, saying as long as everyone in the village helps. But he shakes his head, saying they are asking for a sum 3 times larger than Alsace's tax income. Tiger hears of the sum Eleonora wants to collect. He tells her to bring it down as it is too much, but she refuses. Lemalicia says the sum has to be paid within 50 days, and if she does not receive the ransom on time, he will officially become her property. He asks if they shoved a sword into his mouth and dragged him there just for him to listen to their outrageous talk, and she says she also has a special favor to ask of him. Tiger is given a bow and arrows and told to shoot at a target. He misses twice and everyone around makes fun of him as he is about to try the 3rd time, saying he now has a feel of the bow. He notices an archer trying to shoot at Eleonora. He tells her to dodge and she destroys the arrow with her sword, Arifar, that can generate wind. Lemalicia orders the guard to capture the rebel as he tries to run off, but Tiger asks if they will take him alive. She tells him that will be too risky and he says he will shoot his foot. He aims at the rebel, who is running on the fence, and shoots his foot. Everyone is surprised as the bow is crude and the distance is about 300 alsens. Tiger then asks Eleonora if he should continue target shooting, but she says that is fine and he did well. The next day, Eleonora apologizes to Tiger. He is surprised and asks her why she is apologizing. She says her men schemed and purposely gave him a bad bow the previous day. She promises to behead them, but he stops her, saying it is unnecessary. She reminds him that they were trying to make a fool out of him to publicly dishonor and humiliate him, so it is only fair that they pay with their lives for that. He begs her to forgive them and she agrees. He then asks her the purpose of the previous day's practice, and she explains to him, but Tiger is surprised that a war maiden is saying she has fallen for him at first sight. She says she fell for his skill with the bow, but some of her men overreacted after hearing the news and they wanted her to kill him. Lemalicia says she agrees with the notion. Eleonora then says she thought the quickest way to make them stop was to show them his skills, and it worked better than she hoped. She then says she did not capture him for the ransom, but because she found him entertaining. She explains that the battle was one of the most boring she ever fought. The enemy outnumbered their 5,000 soldiers, 5-1, so she expected a brutal battle. But half a day was all it took to wipe out Brune's forces. Tiger asks why she is complaining over an easy battle. She complains that she had come up with several excellent battle plans, and yet the Brune soldiers collapsed during her first one, and they even took the head of the prince. Eleonora says she liked how he attacked her calmly and deliberately, which is why she brought him to Leitmeritz. Lemalicia huffs. Eleonora then asks if she is holding a grudge. Eleonora then explains to Tiger that the first horse he shot was Lim's. She asks about his name Tigerverm, and he explains that he was named after his ancestors, but she can call him Tiger. She then says he can also call her Elen. Elen then asks him to serve under her, promising to give him his titles and that her men will treat him as one of them, but he refuses, saying there is already a place for him to return to and protect. Alsace, one of the soldiers that schemed to give Tiger a crude bow. Rurik has shaved off his hair as punishment for his behavior. He apologizes to Tiger and says he is completely in awe of his skills with the bow. After training, Tiger goes to bath, but he notices the other soldiers' hostility and decides to go to a little bath he discovered earlier. He gets there and sees a dragon pup. As he is petting the dragon, he hears Elen's voice saying the pup name is Leonie. He looks up and sees that she is undressed. He is shocked and quickly turns to apologize, but she tells him to come over and bath. At night, Tiger is lying in his room when Rurik knocks and tells him they just captured a man with a Brunish accent. Tiger steps out and sees Bertrand, who is very happy to see him. He then explains that Duke Thénardier's force is marching on Alsace, and they are up to 3,000. Tiger tries to leave, but Elen stops him, asking where he thinks he is going. Duke Thénardier calls his son, Zion, to his room. He tells him to take 3,000 soldiers and march on Alsace. Zion asks if it is the territory of Tiger, who got himself taken as a prisoner. His father tells him he has something he wants him to take with him. It is obvious that Zion is scared of his father, as he is always nervous when his father speaks. Duke Thénardier brings out 2 huge dragons. He says their training is almost complete, so he should be able to put them to good use. Zion asks if he is giving him the dragons, and he then laughs as he promises Tiger that he will burn down his county. Elen asks Tiger where he thinks he is going, but he only tells her to let him pass. Bertrand asks Rurik who Elen is, and Rurik introduces her to him. He says she is their mistress, Wind Princess of the Silver Flash, also known as Danseuse of the Sword, Lady Eleonora Viteria. Tiger insists that he has to go back to Alsace, and she reminds him that he is her prisoner. He tells her the Thénardier's soldiers are on their way to Alsace, and he cannot just stay in Leitmeritz. He promises to come back to her, and she asks him what he plans to do when he gets there. Tiger is taken aback by this question. He then says he is going to defend his people. She asks him how he plans to do that, as although he is an accomplished marksman, he is still just one man, and that is just like going on a fool's errand. He insists that he might be able to do something, and she also insists that rushing and so haphazardly cannot help anyone. She brings out her sword and says he might as well meet his end there if he wants to die that badly. She asks him if he knows what she is annoyed about. She then continues to say back in Dinant that he did all he could to try and gain an advantage, but he has now lost control of his emotions, and he is rushing ahead without thinking instead of concentrating on what he can do. Tiger then reasons. He wonders why Elen has not struck him down or ordered Rurik and the others to drag him back inside. He wonders if she is offering him a chance to save Alsace. Everyone stands looking and wondering what Tiger's next move will be. He suddenly tells Elen he wants to ask for a favor. He then asks if she can lend him her troop. His request shocks everyone, and Elen starts laughing uncontrollably. She says he is audacious, but he cannot borrow her troop for free. She says she wants all of Alsace, and he says as long as she promises to govern fairly and keep the residents safe. She agrees and tells her soldiers to raise their banners and get ready for battle. As they ride to Alsace, Elen says the Thénardier has 3,000 men, but they have 1,000. She then asks if they have a chance. Tiger says he knows the lay of the land, and he doubts anyone from the house of the Thénardier has been to Alsace for quite some time. Meanwhile, Zion and his father's soldiers advance to Alsace slowly. He says he wants everyone to get a view of the dragons and cower in fear. Duke Thénardier's subordinate asks him why he sent Zion to Alsace. The Duke says now that Prince Rignaz has fallen in battle, the king is losing his grip on his throne and soon Brine will be ruled by either him or Gainlon. And although Alsace is an unimportant place in Brunei, it might end up falling into Gainlon hands, so he would rather reduce it to ashes. The people of Alsace are evacuating their homes and hiding in the forest or mountains. The young children and older residents are taken to the temple to hide as the Nardier's soldiers cannot desecrate any temple. Tita, who is coordinating them, remembers her conversation with Mashes and Bertrand. Mashes says he will find a way to stop Gainlon's soldiers from mobilizing, so Bertrand should go to ZHC-TED and make sure Tiger hears about what is happening. He then tells Tita to help the soldiers in evacuating the people, as they are safeguarding the people. One of the soldiers asks Tita if she will head to the mountains, but she says she will be staying at the mansion as she wants to make sure there is someone to greet Tiger when he gets back. As she sits alone in the mansion, Tita remembers the day Tiger traveled to join the battle against ZHC-TED. Tiger stood by the bow his ancestors passed down to him as he paid respect to it. While eating, he told Tita the pressure of the bow was overwhelming, but she told him not to say that as the bow is a precious family heirloom. He said that is why he always pays respect to it. He showed her how he does it and she was surprised as she has always watched him do that, but she did not know what it meant. He then confided in her that he had not been a good ruler since his father died 2 years ago, but Bertrand is there and so is she. He said they would not be doing nearly as well without the both of them, but she only told him to stop acting weird. As Tiger is prepared to leave, Tita looks scared and asks if he must go. He reminds her that he is a count in the kingdom of Brune and also the head of House Vorn, so he must go. He promised her he will come back as he left. Zion and his father's soldiers have gotten to Alsace. The soldiers pillage the town while Zion and some soldiers watch from a distance. He says he does not enjoy destroying the town and burning it down with the dragon would be more fun, but his father had warned him. The Nardier dragon tamer told Zion that the dragons are not yet used to how towns smell, so he should not take them into the town. Zion said there was no point taking them to Alsace then, but his father said he would use the dragon to intimidate them, and it is not about Alsace alone. It is a warning to the whole of Brune that standing against the Nardier is tantamount to suicide. The soldiers tell Zion the townspeople have fled their homes and they are either hiding in the temple or the mountains. Zion becomes angry that they cannot attack anyone. He looks around the town and sees Tiger's mansion and decides to destroy the place. Tita is still inside the mansion and looks out the window. Holding the heirloom bow, she hears someone scattering things inside and goes to check. She gets downstairs and sees Zion kicking the furniture around the room. She tells him to leave, but he only taunts her that she looks pretty. She yells at him to leave, saying the town belongs to Tiger. Zion moves towards her and uses his sword to tear her clothes. She runs backward and falls, but he says she should get up and continue running or he will cut off her legs next. Tita gets up and runs into Tiger's room. She takes a knife and points it at Zion as he enters after her, but easily hits it away from her hand and tears her clothes further. She takes the heirloom bow and steps out to the balcony, but he follows her there as he continues taunting her. Tita falls and he tries to molest her, but Tiger arrives and shoots an arrow into his hand, and he cries out in pain. Tiger tells Tita to jump as he runs towards the balcony on his horse. He barely catches her, but Hélène uses her Arafar, her sword, to help them land safely. While comforting Tita, Tiger senses an arrow aimed at her and swiftly uses his bow to divert it. With precision, he retaliates, swiftly dispatching the intruder. Witnessing his prowess, the onlookers are amazed as Hélène swiftly organizes them for battle. Striving to join them, Tiger discovers his bow in disrepair. Tita notices and offers him the family heirloom bow. Initially hesitant, Tiger eventually accepts, joining Hélène and the rest in their march towards battle. Tiger, Hélène, Lim, Bertrand, and Rurik are having a meeting. Lim informs them that 300 Thenardier soldiers are dead, the remaining soldiers have escaped, and they are sure to have rejoined their main army. Hélène asks about the commander and Lin says he has also escaped. She says they will leave 100 men behind to protect the town, and Hélène says that will reduce their fighting force to 900. She then asks Tiger where he thinks the enemy will run to, and he says he believes they will go to the Malsheim Plains, as it is where they can use their cavalry best. Hélène then says they will go there to give them what they deserve and more. The Thenardier's soldiers report to Zion, and he is shocked that ZHC-TED soldiers are helping Alsace. He becomes nervous and says it is Tiger's fault. He starts ranting and the soldiers are surprised at his behavior. He orders them to send more scouts and make sure they come back with the enemy's number. Zion splits up his remaining men into 3 groups. The first consisted of 700 infantrymen armed with bows and spears. The second was a heavy cavalry unit wearing hardened steel armor and carrying lances, and the remaining 1,000 soldiers made up the main force. Zion is following a traditional Brunish battle plan for fighting on grassy plains. The only thing special is the 2 dragons. Meanwhile, in Alsace, Tita tells the townspeople to gather as many ropes as they can. She appreciates them as they help, and they say it is all for Tiger and they need him to stick it to those Thenardier soldiers. Lim, who is watching her from a distance, remembers Helene's orders. Helene says she and Tiger will go after the soldiers with 400 soldiers and Lim will be in charge of the rest. She then asks if she has any ideas. Lim says she needs a lot of ropes and Tita tells her she will take care of that. Tita then seems uncomfortable. It becomes so obvious that everyone looks at her wondering what is wrong. After a while of summoning courage, she then asks Helene how she and Tiger are connected. Helene smiles as she says he belongs to her and Tiger agrees to stay for the time being. He is her prisoner. Tita yells that she is not giving up on him and she runs out of the room. As Tiger and Helene prepare to leave with the soldiers, Bertrand joins them carrying arrows for Tiger, who tells him to stay behind him and Helene to avoid being hit. The formation the Thenardier is using has always proved infallible, so to counter it, the ZHC-TED army positions 400 cavalrymen to face the foe head-on. Helene and Tiger stand at their vanguard. The 2 armies are about to march on each other, their fight imminent. Helene asks Tiger if he is scared. He tells her he is, but he has a feeling that he won't lose. She says she has the same feeling and she brings out her sword, telling her soldiers to charge. And with that, the battle begins. As the battle begins, Helene uses her sword wind skill to deflect the enemy's arrows. Tiger then shoots at them, using 3 arrows at a time. Helene says his skill with the bow is really out of the world, but he says it is tall coming from someone with her powers. She then tells him not to take it the wrong way as she was only complimenting him. The fight continues and Tiger, Helene, and her soldiers kill the Thenardier soldiers easily. Soon one of the dragons arrives scaring the ZHC-TED soldiers, and Helene is surprised that they tamed a dragon. The Thenardier army sends their dragons straight at the enemy while attacking the flanks with cavalry. The ZHC-TED forces are unable to move past the dragon, and the plain is about to overflow with their blood and bodies. Tiger aims for its eye, but it is too hard and the arrow falls off. Zion laughs as he taunts Tiger, saying he should die. One of his soldiers then tells him the enemy is ambushing them and attacking the second column's flank. Zion says they are using the same cheap trick they used in Dinant. He then tells the soldier to send 400 men from the flying column. Lim, who is in charge of 400 cavalrymen, charges from another side and Helene looks happy, saying that's what she had been waiting for. The independent troop led by Lim strikes at the Thenardier's flanking unit. With the enemy advance halted, Helene moves to challenge the land dragon without wasting time. She says she was not expecting a dragon, so as a reward for surprising her, she will show them a somewhat fancy move. She uses her sword, Arifar, to call on the wind and uses it to tear the dragon into 2. Tiger asks her what power she just used as he has never seen it before. She says that's because she has never used it in front of others as it is too powerful, so she does not use it against humans. Rurik then warns them that the enemy is sending soldiers from their flying column and Lim says they will pull back as planned. Zion split off 400 cavalrymen from his main force, forming a flying column. But without pulling a fight, Lim's unit retreat to the hills. The Thenardier soldiers pursues them, but they soon falls into the ambush that ZHC-TED soldiers had set up. The ropes Tita collected was tied together and laid on the ground. The Thenardier army horses trip on them and they all fall. The ZHC-TED soldiers then turn back and kill the soldiers. Some Thenardier soldiers tell Zion the enemy is approaching from behind with 2,000 soldiers. This scares him as they only have about 800 soldiers remaining. A soldier says they should use the winged dragon, but Zion refuses, saying they had already killed 1 dragon and he will be blamed for losing them. He wonders what to do and later decides that his life is most important. He tells the soldiers to call the second column back as they are retreating. The soldiers are shocked. They say they can tough it out, but he refuses. What Zion does not know is that less than 100 ZHC-TED soldiers are attacking from behind. However, they brought 2,000 spare horses with them. Tiger took advantage of the terrain and the setting sun to make them look like a huge army. The knights serving House Thenardier could not refuse an order, so they retreated, and as they do so, the battle enters its next phase. The ZHC-TED army breaks through the Thenardier 2nd Cavalry column, and the main force is also being pushed back. Zion refuses to accept that someone like Tiger will defeat him, but Tiger soon reaches him with the ZHC-TED soldiers. Tiger tells Zion it is too late for him to run away. Zion says Tiger is the one that betrayed their country by bringing in ZHC-TED forces. Tiger reminds him that it is all his fault as he made innocent villagers suffer, burned their houses, and stole their property. Zion says the commoners are the same as plants, that they can be cut down and will grow back in time, so he does not care about them. Tiger says he cannot possibly understand how Zion thinks, but he does know that he will make him pay for plundering his land and tormenting his people. Zion then says he challenges Tiger to a duel. Tiger steps forward with his bow and arrows, while Zion carries a shield and a spear. Zion makes fun of him for his choice of weapon, but Tiger says they should put it to a test. He shoots at Zion, but he guides himself with the shield. Zion says that is all a bow can do, but Tiger continues to hit the lance at the same spot 3 times. Zion says it is impossible to have a proper duel with him as he is good at nothing but the bow. He then charges at him saying he will lop off his head. As Zion runs towards him, Tiger shoots at him once more and Zion cries out. Apparently, Tiger has been hitting the same spot on Zion's shield to weaken the spot. He then shoots at Zion's hand from the other side and the arrows then pin his arm to the shield. The Nardier soldiers see that Zion is losing the duel, so they quickly run in to fight Tiger, but Elen tells her soldiers to help Tiger. Zion takes the opportunity to escape on the winged dragon, saying his father will crush Tiger and his precious Alsace. Elen says her wind blades cannot reach him from the distance, and Tiger is pained as he wonders if Zion will get away after all he has done. He suddenly hears a voice telling him to shoot the dragon. He looks at his bow wondering if that is what is talking to him. He then decides to shoot at the dragon. Elen watches him and realizes that her sword is lending him its strength. Tiger shoots the arrow and it hits Zion, killing him and the dragon. With their commander dead, the Thenardier soldiers lose their spirit and are easily routed, and thus Alsace is safe once more. Tida is happy as she cooks breakfast early in the morning because Tiger is back home. After cooking, she takes some food to his room, but as she enters, she sees Elen putting a sword into Tiger's mouth to wake him. Tida berates Elen for shoving a sword into Tiger's mouth, saying she could have injured him. Elen tries to say Len was the one who did it at first, but Tiger says it is not a big deal and he can still eat. Tida tells him it is a big deal. Elen then tells Tiger she is going to ZHC that morning, but before leaving, she wants to ask him what his plans are from then on, but Tiger seems not to have a plan yet. As Elen prepares to leave, she tells Lim she will come back the moment she calms the king. She then realizes she should take a guard detail with her, but Lim says that has been taken care of and Rurik will be leading them. Elen notices Lim's gloomy expression and asks her what the issue is. Lim then asks her where her immense confidence in Tiger is from. Elen says firstly, his power is fascinating and she does somehow like him. She says Lim likes him too, but Lim says he has his merits but she can never rely on him. Tiger sees Tida dressed to go out and asks her where is going. She tells him she is going with him to Hunaware. And she even made lunch for them. He says he wants to go see how the village is doing, so he will not have time for a picnic, but she insists she is going with him. Tiger notices she seems scared and agrees that she will go with him. Alsace was able to enjoy some quiet because both the Thenardier and Gainlan armies withdrew. Ultimately, the peace will not last long as Duke Thenardier is angry. He rants that Gainlan pulled back his forces the second the Nardier's soldiers were defeated. The Nardier dragon tamer tells him the next dragon will be ready in a month. He then asks what the Nardier plans to do about Tiger and Elen. The Nardier says they will send the Sarash, who are a notorious group of assassins, to Tiger, and for Elen, they will pit another war maiden against her. Tiger and Tida walk around the Hunaware village, asking how they are faring. The villagers all appreciate him for helping them and said they all hid in the mountains during the battle so they were all safe, which relieves Tiger. Meanwhile, Elen goes to Silesia, ZHC royal capital, for an audience with King Victor as she stands before the king, in the presence of his subordinates and other war maidens. The king questions her for taking an army into Brune territory without obtaining permission. The king asks her why she did that and says he will determine a fitting punishment for her reckless conduct based on her response. She says she was hired by Count Tiger Vermanvor, who is a nobleman in Brune and the lord of Alsace. He asks her what Tiger's objective is and she says it is to protect the peace in Alsace. But the king says it is a hollow excuse. The king angrily says she involved their kingdom in a dangerous conflict by behaving like a common mercenary. A war maiden, Safia Obertas, interjects and kneels before the king. She says she will address the king. Safia says Brune could not possibly want them involved in their internal conflict, and they will inquire about Elen's actions before long. And when they do, ZHC can explain what position their kingdom will take. While Elen taking action without obtaining the king's leave is indeed an issue, the battle has always favored haste over caution. Elen stands at a corner in the palace, waiting for Safia, but another war maiden, Ludmilla Lurie, approaches her and taunts her, saying she still does not know what her position as a war maiden entails. Elen then also taunts her for still being tiny. She then says if Ludmilla shows some humility and bows her head, she will teach her how to grow a bit. The two face each other angrily until Safia arrives and hits their head with her staff. She admonishes them to always be nice to each other. Elen blames Ludmilla, who in turn blames Elen, and Safia hits their head with her staff again. As they both hold their head from the pain, Safia asks Elen why she is still in the palace. Elen says she wants to thank Safia for speaking up for her as she never would have caved in on her own. Ludmilla tries to taunt Elen again, but Elen tells her to leave, saying she is having an adult conversation with Safia. As Ludmilla leaves, Safia tells her she has turned Ludmilla against herself as Ludmilla has been in contact with Duke Thenardier for a long time. Sofia explains that Ludmilla does not like Duke Thenardier at all, but her family has been on good terms with House Thenardier long before she was even born, and a girl as prim as Duke Thenardier will never let her personal feelings endanger such a partnership. Tiger has a dream about the past, as he and Tita played together when they were still little kids, and how his father tells him that as feudal lords, they are there in case something happens and they serve so that their people can live in peace. He wakes and calms himself. He then notices Tita sleeping beside him. She wakes as he pets her, and she quickly apologizes, saying she was waiting for the right time to wake him, but she also slept off. He laughs, saying she must have been exhausted as well. He apologizes to her, but she says she should be the one doing that. He then reassures her that letting him rest helped him work something out. Tiger and Tita get back home to see Lord Mashes has arrived. He enters the house and sees Mashes and Lim having what seems like a stare-down competition with Bertrand standing beside them, not knowing what to do, and Mashes tells Tiger to explain what is going on. After Tiger explains everything to him, Lord Mashes apologizes to Lim for suspecting her. Lim, in turn, says she should be the one apologizing, as it was only natural for him to be cautious upon seeing soldiers from another kingdom there. Mashes asks Tiger what his plan is, and he says he is going to attack Duke Thenardier. As everyone stares at Tiger, Mashes asks him if he is siding with Duke Gainlon, but Tiger says he has no plan to work with either of them. Tiger expresses himself, saying he inherited Alsace from his father and he must defend it and the people living there. He also says he is a feudal lord and he is there to protect his subjects. Afterward, Mashes heads to the capital to have an audience with the King of Brune to make a case for Tiger's cause being just, while Tiger goes from county to county looking for allies. At one of the counties, he meets with Viscount Augur, who says he has a general idea of what is happening from Mashes. He then says he would have declined if the request came from him alone, as he may be in the right, but he did not stand a chance against Duke Thenardier before, and Tiger asks what he means by saying before. Augur explains that Tiger does not only have Mashes as his ally, he now has ZHC-Ted army on his side, so he is on his way to becoming a third force next to Thenardier and Gainlon. Augur then says he swore allegiance to the royal family and refuses to kowtow to any of the dukes, and he is far from alone in thinking that. Hélène arrives back in Alsace and sits with Tiger and Lim to tell them the outcome of her journey. She says she got the king's permission, but it came with two caveats. Firstly, if Alsace becomes her territory, she has to hand it over to the king. Tiger asks if that means Alsace will be confiscated, and she tells him yes, but Lim reassures that will only happen if it becomes her territory. Hélène also says the war has only begun and there are several ways to change Alsace's situation. She says the real problem is the second condition, as the king said she should put the interests of ZHC-Ted before anything else and she should behave prudently. Lim explains that the crux of what their king said is the part about putting their national interest first. As a ZHC-Ted nobleman with ties to Duke Thenardier may asserts the duke's victory is in the king's best interest and take part in the war as they wish. Hélène says the king deliberately phrased it that way to allow for such interpretations to ensure he benefits no matter the winner of the war. Someone knocks on the door and Lim goes to check who is there. Hélène continues to reassure Tiger they will win the war. Soon Ludmilla barges in. She introduces herself to Tiger as the bearer of the cleansing spear. Ludmilla Lurie, she says she came to see Tiger as she wants to discuss an issue with him, but she insists they take the conversation somewhere else. Hélène and Lim follow them as they ride into the forest. Tiger asks Ludmilla what she wants to discuss with him, and she says Thenardier has a lot of allies outside Brune and she is one of them. So Tiger does not stand a chance against him. As Tiger is about to reply her, he notices a trap heap and they all stop. They realize it is a group of assassins and they may be after Tiger. He kills one of the assassins and they find out it is the Sarash assassins. Lima also kills another, but a snake bites Lim at her area. As she falls unconscious, Tiger catches her and says she has a chance as the snake is not poisonous. He quickly uses his mouth to suck out the poison and Hélène rushes towards them. 5 of the assassins try to attack, but Ludmilla uses her weapon Lavius to call on ice and uses it to kill them all. She then says Hélène is a failure as a war maiden for getting so flustered over one of her retainers. She then leaves, saying they should meet at Rotnik, while she goes to fetch a doctor. Hélène and Lim are in the bath together. She tells Lim she feels relieved that she is now okay, but it is still annoying that Ludmilla was the one who saved her. Hélène apologizes as she just stood there, too stunned to move when Tiger was helping Lim. She then says she has prepared a reward for Tiger. Tiger enters another bath and he is shocked to see Ludmilla inside and bathing. As Ludmilla notices him, she rushes out of the bath and points her weapon at him. Tiger closes his eyes and tells her to please put on some clothes. She replies to him that she cannot be embarrassed to be seen undressed by a lowly animal. She then says it seems he is not there to attack her as he is not doing anything. Tiger apologizes, saying it was an accident as he thought the bath would be empty. She asks if that is all he has to say, and he says he is deeply sorry, but she still hits his head with her weapon. Tiger, Elen, Lim, and Ludmilla are at the market and walking around. They stop at a stall selling food, and Ludmilla stands staring as the others buy some food. Elen taunts her that she cannot deign to eat gruel from a street stall. Ludmilla tells her that a war maiden should not eat from a street stall, but her stomach makes hungry noises. As Elen is eating, she makes silly noises saying the food is too good, which angers Ludmilla, who is hungry. Tiger then gives her his food, saying it is his way of apologizing for his earlier mistake. This makes Elena angry, and she warns Tiger not to waste a moment of his time on Ludmilla. Tiger says he only offered her his food, and the people in the market make fun of them for quarreling like lovers. Ludmilla then tells Tiger she has lost interest in him as he is under Elen's thumb. She turns to leave, but Elen calls her back and says if she is to paraphrase her words, she means she can't even recognize how great a man Tiger is. Ludmilla storms off angrily, and Elen tells Lim to strengthen their border patrols once she gets back to Leitmeritz, just as Elen predicted. Ludmilla assembles an army on Leitmeritz's border. As a result, Elen ends up being sandwiched between the forces of Duke Thenardier and Ludmilla. From the start, Thenardier intends to restrict Elen's movements by having Ludmilla keep her in check. Elen tells Tiger and Lim that Duke Thenardier is more clever than his son, and Ludmilla might be keener on fighting her than they think, as being in Thenardier's god books will improve the situation for her principality, Almonds. She then turns to Tiger that she will let him decide if they should go after Ludmilla or if they should send the troops to Alsace and guard against Thenardier and Gainlon. Tiger says they also have to think about Viscount Augur's safety now that they are allies, but they should send an envoy to Ludmilla. Ludmilla ignores the envoy dispatched by Tiger, and each party gets ready for battle. Ludmilla tells her subordinates Elen is coming to them, and one of them asks her if they are going to fight the Wind Princess of the Silver Flash. She reminds them that House Lurie and House Thenardier have been allies for about 80 years, and the alliance will not be destroyed on her watch. At the Bleikelen Plains, west of the towering Tatra Mountains, amid the frigid air and the fluttering snow, the first round of battle was about to begin. Both sides shot arrows and started attacking each other. Tiger also joined them in the fight, but the day ended with neither side being able to achieve victory. Both armies suffered heavy casualties and drew back. At night, Elen asks Tiger what he thinks about Ludmilla's soldiers. He says no matter how many they kill, there is still no opening. Elen admits that Ludmilla probably has the strongest defense among all the war maidens. Lim says she does not see Ludmilla fighting at the front too often, but Tiger, remembering how she easily killed the assassins, says he is glad she didn't. Elen says she can easily face Ludmilla and promises to lead the battle the next day, so she will crush Ludmilla. Lim asks her how her previous battle with Ludmilla ended, and Elen says she has 2 victories and 1 loss. Lim says Ludmilla said the same thing when she asked her. Tiger asks why they can't stand each other, and Elen says that there is a tradition of Leitmeritz and Almonds being at odds. She explains that there have been hostilities from war maidens of House Lurie, including Ludmilla's mother and grandmother. Tiger asks if Ludmilla inherited her rank, but Elen says war maidens are always chosen by their dragon gear. The next day, they find out that the Almut's forces have withdrawn completely, and it seems they have holed up in the Tatra Mountains. This makes Elen angry, as they seem to have gotten them good and stranded. Only one path leads to the citadel overlooking the Tatra Mountains, and the incline leading up to it is littered with defensive positions, making an enemy approach extremely difficult. Elen and Tiger scout the area. She tells him Ludmilla used her lavias to reinforce the gate's structural weaknesses with ice, making it far tougher than normal, and from what she heard, her ancestors had a hell of a time trying to go around it, but she will win the fight, no matter what. The Leitmeritz army charged over and over again but gained no ground. Soon the battle came to a complete standstill. Lim argues with Elen, saying she refuses to allow her to go to the Tatra Mountains alone. Elen insists that if they continue that way, the battle will drag on endlessly, and the cold is already taking a toll on their men. She says she can use Arifar's power to fly and swing around the Almuts' camp and wipe them all out from behind. Lim tells Tiger to stop Elen, as what she wants to do is too reckless. Elen then asks Tiger who his owner is, and he tells her he belongs to her and she is very important to him. But her plan is too reckless, and he does not want her to do something that dangerous. Elen is happy with his words that she is important to him, and she says she will not go with her plan only if he has a better idea. Tiger says he does and asks if they can do him a favor. Tiger walks around the mountains wearing a bear skin. As he stops to rest and drink some water, he reasons that it has been 3 days since he left their camp. Lim gave him a bear skin to wear, explaining that she once heard of a village where the hunters wear animal hides and the bear skin would keep him from drawing suspicion. Tiger continues walking and soon sights an animal. He shoots it with his arrow and walks towards it, but as he gets to the animal, he notices someone else also shoots an arrow at it. He looks up and sees Ludmilla, who does not see his face because of the bear skin. She inquires if he's the individual who fired the second arrow and from where he launched it. Tiger indicates the spot where he released the arrow, but but she admonishes him not to deceive her, citing the considerable distance. Tiger then shoots an arrow in the direction he came from, astonishing Ludmilla with its far reach. She apologizes, acknowledging her unjust doubt, and he reasons that she might not be as stubborn as he thought. Tiger and Ludmilla take shelter inside a cave, and she tells him to take off his pelt, saying the cold and snow will not bother him as long as she is around him. Tiger does not want Ludmilla to know who he is, so he says the laws of his land forbids hunters from taking off the hides when they are up in the mountains. She asks what his name is, and he says his name is Urs. She says she is a war maiden and he should come and serve her, as his skill with the bow makes him more than worthy of joining her army. But Tiger refuses and say he traveled from a faraway land and he will eventually return to the land of his birth. Ludmilla makes tea for both of them, and after a while, he tells her to tell him her story. He says she can imagine she is venting into a tree hollow, and she teases him, saying he is the nicest bear she has ever met. She then says when she was chosen to be a war maiden, she felt ready for the honor and responsibility that came with it, but she had to work with people she hated for the good of the country, and to uphold her family's reputation, she had to hide her feelings. The following day, Tiger and Ludmilla bid farewell, with her inviting him to visit her palace in Olmutz whenever he pleases. Tiger lingers behind, retracing Ludmilla's steps to the citadel. Upon rejoining Hélène, they, along with the soldiers, make their way to the citadel, and opting for a stealthy approach, they aim for the rear gate. Hélène attempts to force it open with her Laedmo's skill, but it proves ineffective, alerting Ludmilla's soldiers, who begin firing arrows. In a moment of desperation, Tiger calls upon Arifar's power, empowering his arrow to shatter the gate. Hélène starts the fight and kills some of Ludmilla's soldiers. Tiger kills some archers attacking her, and soon Ludmilla comes out and says she would never have guessed Hélène would storm the castle herself. Hélène says she is there to thank Ludmilla for helping Lim earlier, and she also brought her a gift, a slice of humble pie. The two start fighting using their weapons and skills. Hélène asks Ludmilla how it feels to be on the receiving end, as she is always looking down on others. The two continue their fight and others watch. Even Tiger is shocked at how intense the battle is. The war maidens are now tired and their subordinates try to interfere, but they tell them not to, saying it is time to put an end to their fight. Suddenly a Serash assassin attacks and he is about to strike Ludmilla, but Tiger kills him with his arrow. After seeing his shot and his arrow, Mila realized that Tiger was, in fact, Urs. She slapped him and asks why he saved her. She says with his skill, he could have shoot the man after he killed her. Tiger says she should take it as him returning the favor, as the tea she poured him was heavenly and delicious. Ludmilla then asks him what he wants from her, and he says staying neutral is foremost. She asks if he is not interested in an alliance, and he says he is, but he does not have anything to offer her, so she will only stand to lose. With Mila's impression of Tiger's sincerity, she announces her neutrality, and the battle in Tatra Fortress is officially over. True to her word, Ludmilla declared herself neutral, and she also paid for all the damages caused by the skirmishes between Leitmeritz and Olmutz. Now Hélène no longer had to worry about being attacked from the rear, freeing her to concentrate on the war against the Nardir. However, the Nardir simply made his next move as if everything had gone according to plan. Using a royal writ, he brings another faction into play. Elsewhere, Roland and his Navarre knights successfully repel the Sachstein army and kill them. Clad in black, he wields the invincible sword Durandal, and he is Brun's mightiest knight. Once he takes the order of the Navarre knights, the Brun western border became impenetrable. Roland receives a letter on Farron's behalf that they are to kill the insurgent. His second-in-command, Oliver, asks who the insurgent is, and he says the Count of Alsace, Tiger Vermont-Vorn. A month has passed since the battle against Olmutz, and Tiger, with 5,000 ZHCTDN knights at his back, has returned to Brunn once more. Algar appreciates his help in taking care of Olmutz, as it helped him protect his territory. He then gives Tiger his men, saying they are a motley bunch, but they make up for it in numbers. Tiger starts moving his army to the western tip of territoire, where he establishes a base of operations near Nematakum, an area controlled by Duke Thenardier. Hélène insists on naming the troops Silver Meteor Stormtroops, and Lim insists that the name is childish and will never raise the troop's spirit. They ask Tiger, who does not have any idea about naming the troop. Rurik then enters, saying there is another fight going on. Tiger steps out to check out what the issue is, and Hélène comments that everything seems to be okay on the surface, but having a lot of soldiers in their army brings its host of problems. Lim then says Mashes has still not returned from the capital, and they do not know if Tig's petition has been delivered to the king. Tiger gets to the fighting soldiers and finds out the argument is based on a cloud. The Brunish soldier says it looks like one of Bayard's hoofprints, but the ZHCTDN soldier insists that it looks like a Zernitra trail. Tiger goes to Saunier with Viscount Augur for a meeting with some local village heads. During the meeting, the village heads promise to provide whatever they can. Tiger thanks them and says they will surely be paid for everything. As he is leaving for his estate, Viscount Augur urges Tiger to take things easy and enjoy himself. Tiger then decides to relax by a pond side. Soon he sees Looney flying off in haste and they both fall into the river. A undressed Saphir rushes out. Chasing after Looney, she trips and falls on a shocked Tiger. After getting dressed in the camp, Sophie introduces herself to Tiger as one of the 7 war maidens. She then tells him to call her Sophie. She tells him she is in Brune on official business as the kingdom of Brune has not explained its actions yet. Lem asks her how her audience at Brune's royal palace went, and she tells them it did not go very well as she was told the king of Brune is ill and she was not even able to meet him. She says all she could do was to clarify ZHC-TED official stance, which is that Tiger hired Alen as a mercenary and her actions do not represent ZHC-TED as a whole. Sophie says she was also told to pass a message to Tiger that Tiger stands accused of treason and will be stripped of his rank and title, as well as power granted through them. And until order can be restored, Alsace will be considered a private holding of the king. Tiger is shocked to hear that he is being accused of treason. Sophie tells him she believes a messenger will be dispatched to contact him personally soon and maybe Lord Mashes will be able to tell him more than she can. Alen asks how she came to know Mashes and Sophie explains that she met in Nice, Brune capital, but he had to take care of matters in his territory so he sent her ahead. At night, Alen and Sophie talk about the other war maiden. Sophie tells her Elisaveta maintains superficial ties with both Duke Thenardier and Duke Gainlon. Valentina's principality is situated far away from Brune. No one knows where Olga is and Sasha is bedridden. She says it is safe to assume the other war maidens will stay put for a while, and there won't be a second Ludmilla. But she is more concerned about how the Brunnemen will behave now that Tiger is branded a traitor, especially regiments serving directly under the king. Viscount Augur tells the others that the Order of Navarre is drawing near and the captain of the order, Roland, is known as the Black Knight. He says Roland is said to be the greatest warrior in all of Brune. He was knighted the age of 13, and H has been undefeated ever since. They decide to send a messenger to Roland first. But the Order of Navarre remains set in its intention to fight, and all the messengers sent are turned away. Tiger holds a meeting with his allies. They complain that they thought their enemies were Duke Thenardier and Duke Gainlon, but a chivalric order is now marching against them. And while the ZHC-Tedians are certainly providing them with great support, they are still foreigners, so they should ally with their fellow Brunnemen. Tiger reminds them that Duke Thenardier has long been known for his cruelty, and Duke Gainlon is also infamous for his disregard of the law, but they have never been denounced by an order of knights and they have never been set straight. Tiger then insists that they will fight for their sake, and Viscount Augur agrees, saying that is why they are seeking help from the ZHC-TED army and not from the knights. In Orange Plains, Silver Meteor's stormtroops and Navarre knights collide on the battlefield, where Roland kills most of his enemies. Alen battles with Roland in fierce clashes, but his immense power proves difficult for Alen to defend or counter against him. As she is on the verge of defeat, Tiger comes to his timely rescue for Alen, prompting the Black Knight to change his attention towards Tiger and try to kill him. But Tiger dodges Roland's attack and simultaneously shoots at his horse, straight up in the air at an arc, as a distraction, grabbed Alen, and escapes. Roland, thinking the shot missed, gallops after them only to watch in horror as his horse is struck through the head by the previous arrow. Just as Alen begins to celebrate, she realizes that Tiger is severely injured and the Navarre knights are advancing close behind them. Suddenly, Sophie appears and tells Alen to escape while she confronts the Navarre knights alone. Sophie uses her weapon to create a barrier that stops the advance of the soldiers. Roland says the barrier is interesting but nothing can stop him and his journal. Sophie's weapon notifies her of how dangerous Roland is as breaks the barrier with his sword. They fight briefly but Sophie soon says it is enough and teleports away from the area. And Roland realizes she merely bought time for her friends. A soldier tells him the enemy has ambushed them from behind, and he says they should abandon pursuit and get into formation on the double. Roland remembers what happened when he went to the palace. He met Duke Thenardier and Duke Gainlon. They told him he could not see the king as he was very ill, but he could give the king some peace of mind by eradicating the traitorous Count Vorn and the ZHC-Tedian army infesting Brune. Duke Thenardier also said they would take care of Sachstein and Asvar. Roland reasons that he does not trust the dukes, so he must finish Tiger as soon as possible and talk with the king. At the Silver Meteor stormtroops camp, Alen thanks Mashes as his arrival made it easier for them to escape. She also tells him that Tiger's wound is deep and his fever won't break either. As Tita sits with an unconscious Tiger, Mashes holds a meeting with Alen, Viscount Augur, Sophie, and Lim. Augur says he should tell them what happened in the capital, and Mashes says he was unable to get an audience with the king, and having no other choice, he barged into the palace. He says the dukes are now running the palace and it is a terrible sight. But the Prime Minister, Badouin, approaches him and takes him to where the king is. Mashes overhears some noise and asks Badouin about it. He says the king is playing with building blocks. Augur feels pity for the king and he says he must have gone mad with grief after losing the prince. Masha says only a few people know about the king's condition, and no matter the circumstances, Tiger will need a very good reason and a just cause for contracting foreign soldiers, and Masha says Duke Thenardier and Duke Gainlon are the ones that are making Roland attack Tiger. Some soldiers are worried about Tiger's health and come to check on him, and Bertrand tells them he is fine. Hélène asks him if they are Alsace soldiers, but he says they are part of the squad that belongs to Viscount Augur, and they must have been impressed that Tiger landed a blow on Roland. Hélène enters Tiger's camp and asks Titta if she can give her a moment alone with Tiger. Titta reluctantly leaves and tells Hélène to call her if anything happens. Hélène then moves towards Tiger and holds his hand. She holds his hand to her chest and tells him she will lead the soldiers in his stead and defend those he wishes to defend as he belongs to her. Later at night, Sophie asks Hélène if she is ready to use her dragon art on a human. Hélène says she is and Sophie says she will help her. Hélène reminds her she is there as an envoy, but Sophie says seeing how Tiger managed to make Hélène that serious has made her curious about him. Roland and Oliver talk about Tiger in their camp. Oliver says Tiger had no ties with ZHC before the war and he is not the kind of man who will vie for power. Oliver tells Roland that he heard Duke Thenardier tried to occupy Alsace while Tiger was absent. He then asks Roland what they are to do. Roland says they will proceed as planned as there is a ZHTDN army within their borders, and that is all he needs to know. As the Silver Meteor stormtroops march for battle the next day, Tiger wakes from his deep sleep with Titta by his side. He holds his bow, wondering how he can defend everyone in his injured state. The bow glows brighter and he feels it telling him to go somewhere. Tiger, with Titta supporting him, walks around, following the bow's direction until they get to a temple, leaving their wounded at the camp. The Silver Meteor stormtroops take up position facing south. Opposite them, the Order of Navarre assumes a crescent formation. They intend to make their first squad chip away at the Silver Meteor's advance guard, while the second squad will attack from the flank. The third squad will swing around wide, poised to charge if the Silver Meteor troops try to pursue the first two squads. This is a multi-pronged attack based on adaptive teamwork. By repeating this pattern, they annihilate the enemy. And as the battle begins, the Knights of Navarre utilize the strategy. Meanwhile, Tiger and Titta enter the temple. As they explore the space, Titta tells him the temple belongs to Tur-Nafa, the goddess who presides over night, darkness, and death. Suddenly, the goddess possesses Titta and says Tiger came to her because he desires power. She says while he is idling there, his friends and allies are fighting to their deaths. She then says she will give him power, but he must prove his resolve first. She then says he should shoot Titta, and if his bow acknowledges him, she will grant him power. Tiger resolves to shoot Titta but promises not to harm her. The goddess is impressed that he applied the power to the arrow so it will disperse before Titta is hit. The goddess exits Titta's body and she falls, crying, but Tiger comforts her. As Tiger rushes to meet up with his troop, he remembers the goddess' words that she looks forward to the day he will take full possession of the power she has granted him. Hélène fights Roland as the battle continues. She runs away, trying to pull him away from the main force, and he follows her. Hélène uses her skills on him, but he deflects it with his sword. Sophie joins her, but he still survives. He tells them their power is something to be feared, and he is impressed by their resolve, but they cannot beat him. As he walks towards them, Tiger shoots an arrow at him from a long distance, but he easily deflects it. He asks Tiger if he hired the ZHC army to protect Alsace. Tiger agrees, and Hélène also tells him they are after Duke Thenardier, and they will go back to their country after defeating him, so Roland should join them. Roland refuses, saying he is a knight of the king and he cannot allow insurgents like them to run free. As he is about to attack, Tiger, who is now weak, shoots an arrow with his power, and as Roland guards against it, he wonders which between him and Tiger is giving his life to protect the people, and Tiger is a traitor but who has turned him into one. Roland uses his strength to stop the arrow, but he blows him, Tiger, Hélène, and Sophie to the ground. He stands while the others cannot, which shocks them, but he says he is beaten as he cannot raise his hands. He then says he surrenders and the Order of Navarre withdraw. Oliver signs an agreement with Gerald, Viscount Augur's son, that the western half of the hill will be used to bury the fallen Navarre soldiers, with the dead stormtroops on the eastern half. Oliver says they can use the things he is not taking with him as they wish, as the armor from the dead Navarre soldiers will fetch a tidy sum. Roland tells Tiger and the others he is going to the capital. He says Tiger needs an audience with the king, so he will get him one. Tiger says it is too dangerous, and even Masha's was nearly killed for trying, but Roland insists that he is a knight of Brune and he must make amends for attacking Tiger. Hélène gets a visit from a Rignitzian messenger. After reading the letter the man brought, she then tells Tiger she has to return to ZHC for a while as a good friend of hers, a war maiden to whom she is indebted. And her name is Alexandra Alshevin, but she calls her Sasha. Sasha governs Rignitz, and the place is under attack by another war maiden and she has to defend her. Hélène explains to Tiger that they promised each other that if one is in trouble, the other will come running, no matter what she is caught up in at the time. She says Sasha is sick and she was unable to walk on her own the last time she saw her, but her dragon gear still recognizes her as its owner, so she has to go. Tiger says he understands and he will do his best while she is gone. Roland stays true to his word and sets out alone. Shortly after, he arrives in Nice and goes to the palace. He says he must speak to the king about an urgent matter. He is taken into a room and told to wait there, but the guard locks him inside the room. Gainlon talks from outside, asking how he dared to show his face in the capital after being unable to defeat the traitor. He then says he will be punishing him on behalf of the king and releases thousands of bees inside the room. As the bees attack Roland, he remembers the day he was knighted by the king, as the king tells him to be a knight among knights. Elen and Lim leave Alsace to go to Rignitz. Sophie also leaves for ZHC capital, and she tells Tiger Elen will soon be back, so he should tough it out until then. Uruk stays behind with Tiger. He says the winter there is a lot milder compared to the one at ZHC and his new haircut has made him a lot more sensitive to the cold. He then says 1,000 ZHC Tedian soldiers stayed behind with him and Tiger has their loyalty. The Nardir questions Gainlon, asking why he killed Roland. Gainlon says Roland died while standing, so at least he was magnificent in death. The Nardir reminds him Sachstein and Asfar will take advantage of the situation, but Gainlon tells him Roland is already dead and the borders are safe. He then says he is not so sure about the southern border, as a large army from Muazinal is advancing on them by land and sea, and the southern parts is the Nardir base, which makes him angrier. Of all the countries neighboring Brune, only Muazinal was practicing slavery. Its forces would often invade other countries, slaughtering and plundering everything in their way. There was no rhyme or reason to the raiders' targets, which left the kingdom of Brune at a loss. 20,000 Muazinalan soldiers are currently attacking Brune. In response, the Nardir splits his forces in two, heads south with a contingent of 7,000 soldiers, and plans to lure the Muazinalan soldiers deeper into the country, leaving the borderlands undefended. Meanwhile, the Nardir's remaining 13,000 men were sent to the capital under the pretext of protecting it. But in reality, they were to keep an eye on Gainlon, who was mustering his army in the north. The Nardir reasons that Gainlon is now under his control, but he does not know about Tiger. Tiger sits alone in his tent. He wonders what to do about the Muazinalan soldiers, and he wonders if he should concentrate on bolstering his defense. He then remembers Roland gave him the Durandal as proof that he had recognized his cause as just. After eating the meal she served him, Tiger tells Tida he has to go somewhere, but she will have to stay back with Bertrand. She then tells him to come back safe and sound. Tiger tells Rurik he does not know if they will win the battle, but Rurik tells him to at least say they have a chance, as it will motivate the soldiers. Tiger says the enemy outnumber them 20-1, and he does not believe anyone will believe him if he says they can win the battle. Tiger tells Rurik, Mashas, Augur, and Gerald that he will head southeast together with several volunteers, and their goal is to survive and protect what must be protected. Augur asks if it would not be better to bolster Territoire's defense, but Tiger says bolstering their defense does not mean they can hold out against that many enemy. It started as a conflict between two noblemen, and now Tiger leads an army of 17,000 men in the hope of preventing a national crisis. The Muazinalan soldiers lead their prisoners back to Muazinal. Tiger watches from a distance and tells the others he wants to save as many people as they can. Tiger wonders about using the power of the bow, but he feels he has not mastered it yet. Rurik asks Tiger what he thinks of Gerald, and Tiger says he is good with numbers and accurate in his work, and it is thanks to him that he can focus on fighting during the battle with Roland. Rurik says there is something wrong about him and he feels like he is always looking down on others, and Tiger employs him to get along with everyone. They hear footsteps and see the Muazinalan soldiers chasing one of the people they captured. Tiger shoots the men and rushes to help the lady. He introduces himself to her and tells her she is safe with him. The lady smiles and faints in his arms. Gerald tells Tiger each bowman now has 56 arrows available, and he made sure all cavalrymen received a sling and 11 stones, while all foot soldiers got 5 stones, but it will not last them through a single major battle. Gerald then says the other problem is that the Muazinalan soldiers have taken their countrymen captive and they can use them as shields to keep them from attacking. One of the Muazinalan soldiers tells their general, Qasim, that some Brunish soldiers are attacking their left flank with stones and arrows from a distance. Qasim tells them to send 3,000 infantrymen and eradicate them, and also hits the Brunish army main course. The Muazinalan soldiers arrive at a dead end while going after Tiger and his men. Tiger then commands his men and they kill all the Muazinalan soldiers there. Tiger focuses on setting up numerous small skirmishes in hopes of slowing down the Muazinalan soldiers and whittling away at their numbers. After repeated sneak attacks, the enemy number is reduced from 20 to 18,000. In response, Qasim publicly executes some of the slaves, saying they will no longer put up with their petty tricks. He then organizes 3,000 units and positions them ahead of the main force. He assumes the enemy would never attack head-on as they are greatly outnumbered. However, a contingent of the Silver Meteor stormtroops showed up before him. Kasim is surprised to see just 600 men. He asks his subordinates who their leader is and the man points at Tiger. But Kasim refuses to believe that his Brunnermen despise Bo as cowardly, so he feels they will not make an archer their captain. During the battle, Tiger shoots an arrow at Kasim's head from 300 alsin away, which instantly kills him. With Kasim's death, the Silver Meteor army is victorious and the slaves are free. Rurik later tells Tiger that all the Muazinlan soldiers they captured are saying the same thing, that they are just an advance party. Tiger wonders how many more will be coming, and Rurik says they should be expecting 30,000 more soldiers. Tiger and some soldiers go to face off some of the oncoming Muazinlan soldiers, but they are too much. Luckily, Ludmilla arrives with her army, and she is on Tiger's side. In a flashback, Elen and Milet are seen fighting against each other before they are stopped by Sasha, who tells them she will fight both of them at the same time. And if either of them manages to put a scratch on her, she will do whatever they want for the whole day. But if they can't, they will have to apologize to each other. Elen and Ludmilla attack Sasha, but she defeats them repeatedly. She then tells them to apologize to each other, and they reluctantly shake hands. Back to the present, Elen and Lim get to Rignitz and visit Sasha, who welcomes them into her house. As they settle down in her room, Elen asks Sasha who is so rude enough to attack her. She says it is the Flash Princess of the Thunder Swirl, Elizaveta Formina. Sasha explains that during the midsummer, she and Elizaveta were working together to eliminate a band of plundering pirates, and just as they were about to finish thighs up, Elizaveta sent her a complaint, where she accused Sasha's soldiers of deliberately leading the pirates towards her army. Sasha says she was not sure about the sincerity of the complaint, but Elizaveta broke off contact with a few months later. Sasha says she wishes her dragon gear would finally see her as unworthy of being a war maiden, as she would not have to ask for Elen's help anymore. But Elen tells her not to worry, as she will take care of the issue now that she is there. Sasha then says she heard Elen has been up to some interesting things lately. Elen tries to downplay it by saying she is just helping a poor guy, but Lim says she is the one being helped frequently. She then tells Sasha Tiger is an interesting man and she will like him too. Furious, the leading general of the Muazinlan army wonders why Tiger is so important to ZHC Ted that they sent several thousands of soldiers to support him. He tells his men to send an envoy to Tiger, and if the war maiden with beautiful, he will offer his support, but if she is not, they should come back without doing anything. Tiger sits with Ludmilla in his tent, and she tells him his demerits. She says the first thing he did was to thank her for her help, but he does not know if she is there to help him, and his word would have made some people start making demands. He reminds her that she made tea for him because they are friends, but she says one has to make tea for their enemy sometimes, if only to throw it in their face when things go south. He then asks her why she is there, and she also asks him if he wants her help and that of the 4,000 men under her. Tiger quickly says he does, but she says that is his second demerit. She tells him she knows he needs her help, but he shouldn't say it so readily as it makes him look weak. Tiger stands and tells Ludmilla to please help him. He says he has nothing to pay her with, but if she can wait till the war is over. Ludmilla agrees to help him, but says they should discuss how he will pay her. She reminds me of when he and Elen went to Tatra Mountains and they destroyed the gate even though it was made with 3 steel layers and oak planks between them. She says Arafar is not powerful enough for that, so it must be him. He tells her how he did it and even shows her his bow. She asks him why he does not use it often, and he says he does not understand its power very well, and it also makes him black out sometimes, so using it is last resort. They then make a deal that for the main time he only has to cover her expenses, and in return, he will owe her a favor. Gerald tells Tiger the first girl they rescued is refusing to eat. He then packs some food and sits with her, as he serves both of them and eats a spoon from his plate. She asks him if she can have his food and eats it. After eating, he asks her what her name is, and she tells him her name is Regin. Meanwhile, at Rignitz, the united forces of Legnica and Leitmeritz, led by Elen, and the forces of Lebes, led by Elizaveta, are about to clash in Baraslo, the northeast part of Legnica. Lim remembers Sasha telling her to watch over Elen, as she fears she has started walking a treacherous part and there will be people who disagree with her and they will try to block her. The battle begins and both war maidens move to a separate area to fight. Elen's anger that Elizaveta is attacking her friend makes her attack more ferocious. But Elizaveta is very strong and Elen soon gets injured, but she continues the fight. The war maidens use their skills, and after a while Elizaveta realizes that Elen fights better than she did. She then says the fight is over. Elen refuses, but Elizaveta reminds her that Duke Thenardier and Duke Gainlon are keeping their armies ready, and Muzinal has also sent a raiding party of 40,000 to Brune. Elizaveta says they can sign a contract that they will withdraw and get back to talking about the business with the pirates, and they can even add a 1-year non-aggression pact. Elen says it will be under the condition that Elizaveta will sincerely apologize to Sasha, and she agrees to do that. As they prepare for battle, Ludmilla tells Tiger and Rurik they only have one battle to defeat the Muzainalan army, and it is not about whether they can or not. They have no choice. She says they will follow the same plan used before, as they cannot take out the enemy supply, and it will not be easy to take out the commander this time. She tells them about Curies and how strong he is, and later explains the strategy they will use. After careful scouting by their advance party, the Muzainalan army is marching straight down the Agnes Highway. The 40,000 soldiers are not moving in a single group, but in 7 discrete units with a set distance between each, which allows them to react quickly to surprise attacks while moving. After devising the formation, Curies says he cannot wait to see what Brune and ZHC have in store, but he is surprised that they did not show up at all. The envy he sent gets back and tells him the ZHDC message. They say they have left their homeland and are there to fight, and a dignitary of the Kingdom of Brune asked for their assistance, so they have permission to be there. Unlike the Muzainalan army, who had launched a full-scale invasion, so he should leave with his army to avoid getting in trouble. As the Muzainalan army assembles and gets ready for battle, Curies' men tell him they spot 4 different banners with the enemy, and they have fortified every inch of the hill. They say they can see the sun reflecting off rows of spears, and when they try to move close to the enemy, they shoot them with lots of stones and arrows. Curies asks about the second hill, and they tell him it is blanketed in snow and there is no sign of their enemy on it. They then inform him they have almost caught up with the slaves, and he tells them to hurry up so they can use the slaves as hostages. The Muzainalan army is about to open the Ormia campaign by chasing down the enemy. They lay siege to the mountain stronghold using their first 4 divisions, which left the remaining divisions to pursue the refugees fleeing up the highway. However, the Silver Meteor stormtroops and Almut's army launch a surprise attack from the supposedly unoccupied second hill, with Ludmilla and Tiger leading them. They easily defeat the enemy. Curies is surprised that the enemy hid some troops on the second hill. Soon his men tell him the fleeing slaves were disguised soldiers and they are attacking them. The group Curies thought to be slaves were disguised soldiers from the Silver Meteor stormtroops and Almut's. They engaged the enemy's 5th Division. Meanwhile, the actual refugees were hiding in the hilltop fortress. Tiger had a hard time convincing them to work with him until one of the slaves told the others they cannot fight the enemy if they attack them, and following Tiger's direction is the only way they can survive and also pull a quick one on the Muzainalans. The Silver Meteor stormtroops and Almut's troop defeats the Muzainalan 5th Division. Their main force is now evading the 6th Division and closing in on the 7th. Curies tells his men to dispatch a messenger to the 4th Division and tells them to join his group as reinforcement. He says the remaining 3 group will keep up the siege on the enemy's stronghold. Mila and Tiger's force closes in on the 7th Division and Curies' headquarters. The combined forces of the Silver Meteor stormtroops and Almut's are giving chase to keep the Muzainalan commander from escaping. But then, the 6th Division of the Muzainalan army changes direction to go after them. Tiger tells his men that their flying column should move to intercept the enemy, and the rest will continue going after Curies. The flying column starts moving, but they are already weak and they fall on top of themselves. The enemy takes the chance and kills them easily. They then close in on Tiger and Mila's main force. Curies laughs as he easily escapes them. He admits that they were very close to taking his head. He then deploys the 6th and 7th units of his army to the sides of the Silver Meteor stormtroops in an attempt to corner them. He positions himself at the rear to further distance himself from Tiger's bow. As the battle tires everyone, Tiger tells Ludmilla to escape, but she refuses, saying she has her pride and she will continue to fight. Tiger then says she has her pride and he has his mettle, as he has learned from his father and many others to be brave. They bravely decide to continue fighting, but reinforcements soon arrive. They introduce themselves to Tiger. One says he is Emil and he is with the 1,500 Knights of the Order of Perchet to assist Tiger in the battle on behalf of Mashas. Another says he is Shay and he is with the 1,500 Knights of the Order of Ludes on behalf of Augur. Another says he is August of the Order of Calvados and he is there with his 2,000 Knights to support Tiger. Tiger tells August he knows him as he is a former soldier of House Vorn. August explains that they all got letters from Roland that Tiger is fighting a just battle, which is why they all came to help. He then tells Tiger he has become a fine man just like his father, Lord Urs. As Curies hears that 5,000 knights have joined the enemy, he says the 4th Division will charge together with his main force and the 6th Division will stand their ground. He says the enemy has monstrous mobility and penetrating power, but as long as his army so not attack them head on, they will be fine. But his men tell him 3,000 soldiers are coming in from the north. Curies reasons that his reconnaissance units were thorough, but more reinforcements are still coming to help their enemy. He wonders if he is seeing the power of a just cause that Ludmilla told him about. He tells his men their main objective is to conquer southern Brune, so all his units should retreat and join into one army. The next day, a Muazinalin soldier arrives with the news that the fleet they left behind to attack Brune's southern harbor was sunk by Duke Thénardier. Curies reasons that he has to defeat the Tiger's army as well as Duke Thénardier, and then secure both the south and the port town. But he has only 30,000 men left with him. He then tells his subordinates that they are withdrawing. Curie sends an envoy to butter up Tiger. He bestows him the honorable name, Silvrash, one able to shoot even meteors. It is a complete victory for the Silver Meteor stormtroops. In his tent, Tiger later asks Ludmilla if they have won. She reassures him that Curies is hastily retreating with his army so it is not an ambush. He then sleeps off and falls on her. She then sleeps beside him. Ludmilla's dragon gear wakes her the next morning as Elen arrives back at the camp. She then holds a still sleeping Tiger in her arms as Elen barges in to taunt her. After attending to some people, Ludmilla invites Tiger to her tent. She says she will make tea for him, but Elen refuses, saying she has something to discuss with Tiger. They both drag him, and he resolves the issue by telling Ludmilla to let them meet up some other time that is fine by her. Mila agrees and leaves to help the soldiers resolve some issue. Tiger apologizes to Elen for getting a lot of her soldiers killed. She tells him that not regretting the battle is enough and he should pray to the god he believes in on behalf of those who fought and died so courageously. Valentina appears inside Tiger's room and touches him. Tiger, who is deep asleep, touches her breast. She says she would have taken his head if he were awake. As Tita is about to enter the room, she teleports back to where she came from. After beating Muzinal and traveling for 4 days, Tiger and the Silver Meteor stormtroops hide in Fort Perchet. This is made possible due to their new alliance with Emil of the Order of Perchet. Elen and Ludmilla stand on the roof of the house and Ludmilla says Elen should have just stayed at ZHC-TED. Elen also tells her she must be homesick by now, and she thanks her for her help when she was not around. She says Ludmilla can return to Olmutz as she is with Tiger now, but Ludmilla says their king gave her an order to keep an eye on her and Tiger owes her a favor. Tiger gropes his hand and says something feels wrong. Mashas and Lim reassure him that he is just tired. And as the commanding officer, his duties and responsibilities increase with every victory. Tiger asks why they are holding an early morning meeting, and Mashas says there is a rumor that someone in the camp is the spitting image of Prince Rignaz. Bertrand interrupts and says Regine wants to see him. Mashas looks shocked as Regine enters the room. She looks timid at first, but Tiger reassures her that she can say whatever she wants to. Regine then says until recently, she was known under the name Rignaz. Everyone looks shocked as she continues to say her full name. Lim asks her if she can prove her words. Regine then faces Tiger and asks him if he remembers that they had met 6 years ago at Vincennes. She tells him what they did together at that time and Tiger stands, surprised that she is truly the prince. Elen and Ludmilla sit in the meeting with others. Regine explains that an assassin attacked her in the battle and it was easy for her to act as if she was dead. Elen asks why is pretending to be a guy and she says it is both for herself and her mother. She explains that in Brune, a queen who can't bear a boy is worth nothing and the odds of a woman succeeding to the throne are extremely low. Elen asks how she was able to cope and hide her feminine features. Elen then says if they announce that the prince is alive, Duke Thénardier and Gamelon will try to kill her. And once the people finds out that the prince is a girl, they will lose their trust and they would have played into their enemy's hand. Tiger says he understands her. He asks Mashas if he can see the king, but Mashas reminds him of the king's condition, which makes Regine sad. Tiger asks Regine why she opened up to him and she says he does not have any ulterior motive. Even though after being labeled a traitor, he still helped when he stood to gain nothing. She says he was also gentle when he granted her request. Elen asks what her request was and Regine explains that she told him to help her bath and quickly pulled off her clothes before he could refuse to help. Elen asks her what she would have done if he had jumped her, as what she did was risky and Regine says she knows it was sneaky, but she could not think of another way to test him. Tiger asks Regine if there is any way she can prove that her father is the king. Regine then talks about Duke Gamelon's territory, Lutetia. She says it is the capital of Artesium, and it has a door underneath it that only the members of the royal family know how to open. She says Badwin, the prime minister, also knows about the place. Tiger then says they are going to Artesium. Duke Thénardier's dragon tamer shows him 5 dragons that have powerful enchantments. The dragon tamer says the dragons should be able to tear through 10 war maidens without problems, which makes Thénardier happy. Meanwhile, Gamelon is in his house. He thinks about the brewing battle between him, Thénardier, and Tiger. He feels relieved that the king's mind is not stable and the poison he has been feeding him is also working. He knows Tiger will head to Artesium to prove Regine's lineage, and Thénardier will also go there to prevent that from happening. He then decides to leave a parting gift for the winner. Duke Thénardier kills Gamelon's army easily with the dragons. News reaches him that Tiger is going to Artesium to prove Regine's royalty, and he decides to go there and defeat Tiger and Regine. Meanwhile, the king of ZHC-TED tells Sophie to go to Brune. He says Elen started the war, so she should be ready to withdraw if there is a need to. He then says he is sending Sophie because she has gone there on his behalf previously. As Sophie is leaving the palace, she meets Valentina, who says limiting herself to her territory has left her starving for information, which is why she is there. News reaches Tiger and the others that Duke Gainlon ordered that Artesium should be burned down and he is now missing. Hélène asks what Duke Thénardier is doing and Lim says after killing all of Gainlon's army, he is now slowly heading northward. Tiger tells Regine there is no change in plan and they will still head to Artesium. To obtain proof of Regine's identity, the Silver Meteor stormtroops head towards Artesium. On their way they face off against Thénardier's army on the Villa Cresnes plains. Their army of 20,000 clashes with Thénardier's 24,000. As the two central columns are locked in battle, Hélène and Ludmilla push forward together on the right flank, and their goal is to break through Thénardier's left flank and close in on the dragon. The War Maidens use their dragon gear ability and easily kill 3 dragons, but the remaining 2 dragons are strong. Duke Thénardier watches from a distance as they fight the dragons. He tells his men to surround them the moment they kill the dragons, and it doesn't matter if it costs them 6,000 soldiers. The War Maidens attack the dragon repeatedly, but to no avail. When both sides retreat, Tiger holds a meeting with them and they say the chains on the dragons have magic that is used to cancel out their dragon arts. But Hélène and Ludmilla decide that they will work together to defeat the dragons, so Tiger should focus on Thénardier and the soldiers. After 4 hours, the armies are about to clash again. The Silver Meteor stormtroops try to ambush the Thénardier's soldiers, but they do not fall for it. They pretend to flee. Then Hélène and Ludmilla face the dragons while the others get ready to fight the soldiers. After pretending to flee, Tiger's central column arms itself, and the soldiers engage the left and right flanks of Thénardier's army. Hélène and Ludmilla fight fiercely, and with their joint work, they finally kill both dragons. They then sit as they are completely tired and put their trust in Tiger that he will kill the remaining soldiers. Lim is concerned by Hélène's wounds as they bath in the river with other ladies, but Hélène tells her it is nothing serious as the medics have attended to her, and since Duke Thénardier's army is on the run, there will be no fighting for a while, so she will have all the time she needs to heal up. Hélène, Lim, Mila, Tita, and Regine try to wake Tiger, but he is fast asleep. Hélène comes up with an idea to use her bloodlust to wake him, but he quickly pins her down, which surprises everyone. Hélène later apologizes and promises not to try a stunt like that again. She then asks Tiger what his plan is as they have the opportunity to completely crush the Thénardier. He says they will head to Artesium. Mila asks if they will help those living there as she does not think they have enough supplies for all the citizens. But Tiger says they do not have to as they are not entering the city itself. He explains that they will head to its underground from outside the walls and validate Princess Regine's lineage. He asks Regine what they should expect upon entering the underground, and she says all she knows is what her father told her as she has never entered the place herself. She says their goal is Charles St. Graal, the Holy Grotto. It is said that Charles, the founder of Brune, decided to become king after receiving divine guidance there, so the place is Brune birthplace. She says there are 3 entrances to the Holy Grotto. One is in the central district of Artesium, another is in the Temple of Masia, and the last is the public cemetery. And since the one closest to them is the Temple of Masia, they decide to go there. As Tiger and the others prepare to go to the temple, Bertrand tells him to take him along. He says he knows Tiger will be going to CHC once the war is over, and as he is already old, he will not be able to follow him there, so he wants to stay by his side as much as possible during the war. Tiger agrees to take Bertrand with him and makes him promise to run away if things get dangerous. Hélène teases that they now have a princess and an old man as baggage. She insists on going with them, and Tiger tells her if they face any problem, she should make sure to save herself before anyone else. They get to the temple and Regine leads them to the underground tunnels. They see some murals on the walls and Regine explains that they depict the gods in battle with a dragon. In ancient times, dragons were considered the only beings that could harm a god. Hélène says as someone from ZHC, whose founder supposedly was the incarnation of a dragon, she has some mixed feelings about the story. Regine says the gods did not always fight the dragons but also tried to negotiate with them. As in their legend, the 3 pillar goddesses were created to serve the dragons. She says they should be close to Holy Grotto as they have seen the murals. They continue their journey but they soon come across Duke Thénardier. Bertrand steps back with Regine as the Thénardier's soldiers attack, and Rurik and Tiger fight against them. Hélène attacks the Thénardier, but he is strong and he fights back. Steed, the Thénardier's strongest soldier, attacks Rurik and Tiger. He says they are strong for holding it till that point, and Tiger seems to have earned his title of Silverash. He then tells the other soldiers to stand aside as Tiger and Regine are the only one he came to kill. Hélène fights the Thénardier fiercely, but he also fights with the determination to win. Soon the cave starts to collapse and everyone falls back. Steed advances on Tiger, who tells Rurik to escape with the princess. Bertrand feels concerned about Tiger and stays behind but keeps a distance. Tiger trips while fighting Steed, who then goes ahead to slash Tiger, but Bertrand jumps in front of the sword. Before Steed can recover from his surprise, another section of the roof collapses and covers them all. Tiger regains consciousness and sees that Steed is crushed under some rock. He then searches around for Bertrand, who has lost a lot of blood. Bertrand asks Tiger if he is unhurt, and as Tiger says he is fine, Bertrand smiles and says his life was not sacrificed in vain. Tiger insists that Bertrand is going home to Alsace, but Bertrand says Tiger has grown into a fine, hardworking man, and he did well in defending Alsace. He says he is pleased and proud of him. Bertrand tells Tiger that when Lord Urs fell, there wasn't a single thing he could do, and he was full of fear as he wondered if a 14-year-old boy would be able to govern Alsace. But his fear was unfounded as Tiger surpassed his greatest expectation and took over the role of his father. He says Lord Urs' fear was also unfounded as he thought Tiger would focus only on Alsace. But as Tiger loves Alsace, he also looks to the outside world, so there is nothing for him to worry about. Bertrand's last words are that Tiger should take care of Tita. Meanwhile, Hélène and the rest of the expedition team are making their way toward the main entrance, when an explosion occurs, resembling the Black Bow's power. In relief, Hélène rushes to the crater and finds Tiger passed out from exhaustion due to the bow's power. She then finds Bertrand's corpse. Back at camp, with their impending battle with the Thénardier army drawing closer, Gerard asks Mashes about Tiger's condition and whether he will be alright to lead the army. Mashes responds that he is unsure if Tiger could recover from Bertrand's death in time to prepare for another showdown against Thénardier. Tiger hears Ternaffa's voice. She says he has finally mastered her power as he blasted all the rocks away himself. Tiger remembers how he shot an arrow and all the rocks exploded. He remembers Bertrand and continues to cry while Tita watches from behind. Hélène enters and asks for a moment with him. She asks him what he wants to do, but he tells her to come back the next day. She tells him if she did that, he would have already decided his next step and it wouldn't be what he wants, but something he settled on because he is out of time. She reminds him that he can call off the war and the Thénardier would be willing to negotiate with him depending on the conditions he offers him, and he can protect Alsace that way. Tiger asks her about her own goal and she says she will do what she can about that, but whatever decision he makes, she will fight her battle in a way she can take pride in. Hélène tells Tiger she used to be a mercenary with no homeland to return to, and she just kept wandering the land looking for another fight. Even her comrades in arms would die eventually, leaving her with nothing to call her own, and that is why she always held on to her pride as it lets her be who she is. Tiger thinks about Hélène's words and realizes that it is true. He then goes to Tita and apologizes to her for making her worry. She bursts into tears and hugs him. He then promises her that they will return to Alsace after the war. They will hold a funeral for Bertrand and spend the night remembering him. Later at night, Hélène sits with Tiger. She tells him it is time he realizes the other reason she has been helping him. She says she is not just there out of pure sentimentality, but there is a practical reason as well. Tiger wonders what she means and she asks him why Muezzin will attack Brune South and try to take control of a port town. Tiger says the place is the center of trade and tries to understand her but fails to. She then says fighting is not the only part forward, and he finally realizes what Hélène is trying to say. He visualizes the map and realizes that if they restore the highway connecting Alsace and Leitmeritz, then Leitmeritz will be a big trading center. Pierre Baudouin, the Prime Minister, visits Tiger at his camp. He tells Regine he is happy to see her alive and says the king has told him everything. Mashes asks Pierre why he is there and he says the king is feeling better and he was being poisoned by Duke Ganlon. He then asks Tiger what his intentions are and what he plans to do. Tiger says he will fight Duke Thénardier and strike him down. Pierre then asks why his plan for Brune are, and Tiger says he has no plan for Brune as he wants to make sure Alsace is fine. He will go back to being a ZHCTDN prisoner. Pierre asks him if he is doing that just to help Alsace. Tiger say he is, but the other thing he has to say is that if Alsace is not protected within Brune, he will consider it as part of ZHCTD. Mashes asks Pierre what they should do, and he says they should take Regine to Nice to meet the king as he might not live long. Tiger says Duke Thénardier will most likely try to stop them from entering the capital, but that will be the showdown. As they head to Nice with the soldiers, Duke Thénardier also goes with his army to attack them, and the two armies clash in the wilds of Mireville. When the fighting started, Regine, who is now leading the main force of the Silver Meteor army into battle, realizes that with the death of their second-in-command, Steed, Thénardier's army was now fighting poorly. Meanwhile, Tiger and his companions encounter Thénardier, who later regrets not storming the castle and holding out there. Tiger questions why he had attacked Alsace, and he responds that because Tiger allied himself with ZHCTD, he had tried to destroy Alsace and prevent him from growing stronger. As Tiger tells him that he wants vengeance for Thénardier's actions against Alsace and Brune, Thénardier proclaims he wants vengeance for his son. Beginning a duel, Tiger prepares his shot, and with the urging of the goddess Ternaffa, tries to gain more power. Noticing Tiger's ill intentions, Hélène punches Tiger in the face, knocking his arrow to the floor. She tells him that he shouldn't let his anger get the best of him. Thinking of Bertrand, Tiger regains his composure and readies another arrow, before throwing away his remaining arrows, proclaiming that he only needs one to prove his mettle. As the Nardier charges, Tiger lets loose his arrow, aimed for the Nardier's head. The Nardier brings his sword down to destroy the arrow. He seemingly misses and is struck by the arrow. As he lay there dying, he remembers the arrow averting from the sword's path, dodging its strike. Surprised, Elin asks her sword, Arifar, if it had a hand to play in the arrow's trajectory, only to learn it had not. Mila then says that Tiger managed to gain the wind itself as an ally. Following the Nardier's death, the battle ends. As the group arrives at Nice, Tiger sits next to the princess, parading his troops through the city. As the crowds cheer for the knights, commanders, and princess, Tiger expresses his discomfort towards it. When they arrive at the king's bedchamber, they find Sophie already there. Farron expresses his sorrow that he was a poor king and father. He thanks Tiger for his deeds and asks for what he wishes. Tiger responds with 4 things. Payment for the kingdom of ZHC-Ted's alliance in the war. The kingdom of Brune will pay for all the damages caused by the kingdom of ZHC-Ted during the war. The land of Agnes shall be given to the kingdom of ZHC-Ted. And a 3-year non-aggression treaty with the kingdom of ZHC-Ted. The king agrees and has Regine sign the document, recognizing her as the next rightful ruler of Brune. He then makes Tiger the next Lumiere Knight, Knight of the Moonlight. Tiger decides to go back to ZHC-Ted as a prisoner of war, as first agreed upon. A few days later, King Farron quietly passes away in his sleep. In ZHC-Ted, Lim and Elen talk about the new trade route they were building with the cooperation of Regine and praise her trustworthiness. They wonder what Tiger plans to do next. Mila is shown trudging through the snow with a bow. Badwin thinks about how some of the previous Lumiere Knights had gone on to be king and wonders if Tiger could end up doing the same thing. Tiger is shown shooting at an unknown target as Elen thinks about how glad she is that she had met him.